Ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of the AVB Podcast, we are here at the lovely Glass Monkey Studio, sitting down with the incredible Mr. Spenny Spencer Rice. How's it going, dude?
AJ, how you doing, man?
Good, man.
Nice to see you.
You were kind enough to come and join us, yourself, Tony Lee, and Tony Gray. Were kind enough to come here and sit down with us for our one-year anniversary show. We had a bit of a chat then, but I've been itching to actually get you by yourself in a chair to have the full conversation since then, so glad we finally get to do that.
All right.
I'm going to start with you the same way we start with all of our guests on this show, and I want to know about the house you grew up in, man. Most people know you from your show, but I want to hear about your family history. Where did you start?
Toronto.
Okay.
Upper middle class Jews.
What does that mean in Toronto at that time?
Well, we had some money back then, but not crazy money, but money, a lot of privilege, I guess.
Okay.
You know. And my parents divorced. I was about 14, maybe 13. Mom moved to California. I stayed with my dad. But it was really cool because I'd go visit my mom in California, where all my friends would. Can I swear?
Of course.
They'd fuck off to camps in Northern Ontario, and I'd get on a plane and go to LA.
Oh, cool.
And all the Jews that I knew, they all went to Miami. No one ever went to LA. And my mom sort of left my dad for an actor named Jeff Cooper, who's from Hamilton.
Okay.
And he was, at the time, he was a semi-regular on the show Dallas.
Okay.
So I got to go to the studio, and I wanted to meet Victoria Principal. I had a big crush on her.
So was that Hollywood draw? Like, was that something you knew about, like right away?
Well, of course you know about Hollywood, but it just the people where I grew up never went out that far west. You know? So it was like this magical place, you know. And I was the right age, and there was a lot of drugs and alcohol and fun, and my mom was kind of nutty in herself, and she had, you know.
Was she an actress at all?
No, she was a Jewish princess of epic proportions. Spoiled rotten by her father, but fun and wonderful. And I really got to do some and meet people. And she inherited some money when my grandfather died, and she moved to LA and blew it all, but just lived really large. And I got to be a part of that just by virtue of she was my mom, and I wanted to spend time with her. And
how much time would you spend with her? Was it like just summers and stuff, or?
A couple of summers, yeah, and Christmas and Easter, and the holidays when I wasn't in school. And I smoked hash with Scatman Crothers, and I did crazy stuff that that none of my peers were lucky enough to do. And I loved show business from the time I was very young, so it was a magical place. Going to a studio, we went to NBC Studios. I had basically run of the place. I could go wherever I want. I was on the set of The Tonight Show. Johnny wasn't there, of course, but it was just seeing it like, oh my fucking God, you know. And Sanford and Son set, and
it seems like you didn't have a whole lot of structure though coming up.
No. My parents are, it was not a normal, stable situation.
On either side?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was loved.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky, and I went to a shrink for years, and they were trying to get me to hate my parents in a way, like they did all this shit wrong, and I loved them. And I still do. They were just like everybody else. They had their own little failures. And
it's interesting though, because you're the third or fourth person that I've talked to that came from a home that was loving but really, really sort of unstructured. Unstable is probably too derogatory of a term, but that turned out to be like really sort of well-read, well-rounded human beings that are super like open-minded and entertainment centric. Yeah. Do you put any perspective on that at all? Is that something?
Well, my father was absolutely hysterical that I played music and that I was wanting to be in show business. He just thought that was insane and economically, risky, which it is. Mm-hmm. My mother was just, she just liked to have fun. She let me grow my hair long. She, I partied with her sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
encouraged all of the creativity. She thought it was cool.
Right.
So.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
No.
No? So just you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so coming up through all of that, what's your life out of your parents' house and into entertainment look like?
Oh, wow. Well, I had a cousin. She passed away when she was only 40 years old. Her name was Marjorie Gross. She was one of the first female stand-up comedians in Canada. And she was my hero and introduced me most quintessentially to the Beatles at a very young age, which was really where it all stemmed from, wrestling and the Beatles. And she ended up, she wrote for Seinfeld, she wrote 4 Seinfeld episodes. She sort of did stand-up, went as sort of far as you could go without blowing up to being a big superstar, and then she became a writer.
Okay.
And she was a script doctor, and she worked on Square Pegs, which was Sarah Jessica Parker's first show, and she worked for Gary Shandling on the Larry Sanders Show. She worked for Bob Newhart, and
So small shit.
Yeah, but then at the end, Seinfeld was, of course, the biggest.
Right.
But she ran away from home basically when she was 16, and she went to New York.
Okay.
And she was a comedy freak.
Is this your mom's sister or your dad's sister?
No, this is my cousin.
Oh,
So
I thought you said your aunt.
it's my mom's father's daughter.
Okay.
And she would be the flashlight person at a club called Catch a Rising Star. And the flashlight person was the fire code. They wouldn't close the place down. They had to have someone with the flashlight. Sounds stupid, but that's what it was. So she knew everybody, and they all knew her, and then she got into doing stand-up. So as a result of that, I got to hang out and meet Larry David before he was famous, Richard Lewis, Sandra Bernhardt, and all this kind of crazy stuff. So, so she was sort of my muse, and to this day, it's sad because she got to see the beginning of maybe Kenny versus Spenny, and then she had cancer, ovarian cancer, and she died like her mom. But she was an amazingly talented and incredible inspiration.
So I know really early on, we had talked about this earlier, and you just kind of touched on it now. You got really interested in wrestling.
Yeah.
Like
I love
really
wrestling.
Interested in wrestling.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, her brother, Jonathan, would take me to Maple Leaf Gardens in the 70s, and I was young, and back then, we were talking about this earlier, they have a thing called kayfabe, which doesn't exist anymore, where there was actual attention paid to not letting people know that it was completely scripted and fake, right? And being a child and witnessing this, and it was gruff, it wasn't like a yuppie phenomenon that it's become. It was like, it was hardcore working class people that went to wrestling every Sunday night at the Gardens for Frank Tunney card. And I saw the Sheik, the original Sheik, Eddie Fairhat, and who was just the greatest heel that ever lived. They'll even say that to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Iron Sheik, the original Sheik. And he had this manager, Ernie Roth, he was a Jewish guy, and he would be this guy Abdullah Farouk. He'd wear like glitter fezzes, and he was his manager, and the Sheik never talked. He was from Michigan, and he was a promoter as well. And when he was in the ring, he wanted to sound like he was from Syria, but he didn't know he's Syrian because he was American. So he'd always go Kalamazoo. I was so terrified by these two guys.
Really?
But it was theater, and I sensed that too, right? So I loved it. I loved the violence. I loved the blood. I loved the.
And you'd see
There's
it
a lot
live.
of comedy too.
This wasn't on TV.
No, this was
right?
live.
Yeah,
it was on TV, and I watched it all on TV.
Okay.
It's changed so much, wrestling, and it's so popular now. Back then, it really wasn't. And so then we used to go to Buffalo to the Memorial Auditorium to see wrestlers because everything was territorial back then.
Right.
So I saw you guys would not know who any of these guys are unless you're of a certain vintage. But I still love wrestling, and I participate in wrestling. Believe it or not, I did on Kenny versus Spenny. We did one show, but I do like independent shows where I'm there more for comic relief than for wrestling. I'm fucking old and my back's sore.
But
I can't wrestle anymore. I can't take bumps. That's what they call them.
Even when we were talking, though, you seemed more interested in the like the manager side of it than
Yes.
the
Well, I'm trying to get a documentary film made now, but good luck on the lost art of wrestling managers. And for those of you who don't know, they were the funniest. They always Bobby the Brain Heenan would be the one that most people would remember who are younger. And they were there to put the wrestlers over, usually to make them get hated, because the managers were always sleazy. You know, they would give foreign objects to the wrestlers, they'd distract. It was a sleazy manager thing. That was what the good ones were, or the ones that were really funny. And Ernie Roth was my favorite. He was Abdullah Farouk, and he became the Grand Wizard.
Right.
And he died a long time ago. But he was just really, really funny, like just to hear him talk.
It's funny to me because in the couple of conversations that we've had, the stuff that you bring up when it comes to entertainment is either very, very like deep historical knowledge, or it's directly about comedy or wrestling.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a weird. Well, yeah, music is another direction we talk about as well. But it's interesting to me. Music to me sort of sits off to the side for a second, only because it's interesting to me that I was talking to Tony. I'm trying to figure out how to word this right, but like it's so. Yeah, I know. It's interesting to me that you are, in the conversations we've had, that you have such a vast and specific intellectual outlook on so much of entertainment, but you
not
choose
current,
to.
not current.
No. I understand, but you're like you look at entertainment intellectually, but you present yourself in like the least intellectual forms there are of entertainment.
Oh, I see.
You know?
Okay. Therein lies the rub. Well, you know, you can look at Kenny versus Spenny, which is, let's be honest, that's what I'm always going to be known for, most likely. And it's hard to imagine two grown-up men walking around with shit in their diapers on TV, that there can be a philosophical underpinning, but there actually is.
Okay.
And I don't know whether...
So it's not just pure jackass with you guys?
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
And Jackass is funny, and I've met a lot of those guys, and you know, but they're just, I mean, they're funny. I mean, I've gone to Jackass movies and people are collapsing and laughing,
yeah.
Which is the ultimate litmus test for comedy, is laughter. But they don't tell stories,
Right.
and they don't do what Kenny and I did, and it was basically, and this ties in with wrestling, good versus evil, right?
Yep.
Baby face versus a heel, and Kenny of course was the heel and I'm the baby face. But what it showed was, if you're a scumbag, fucking smelly shithead like Kenny Hodds, you can get away with stuff, right? And you know, but the philosophical argument in the live show still exists. Who is the better person in the end? You know what I mean? And some people will think Kenny, maybe the majority of people, but I know he's not. I know I am. And I'm going to keep fighting for that. Maybe it's a lost cause. I don't really know. But there is something deep in the friendship that people get through the screen, but also that ethical question.
Talk to me about your friendship with Kenny. How did that get started?
Our fathers were friends. I'm about 4 years older than him, and when I got towards the end of high school, all my friends got really serious. You know, they stopped partying. They were thinking about university, and you know, with the Jewish people, they have to be professionals, and I didn't have that pressure on me, so I would always gravitate towards the young kids that were still crazy.
Right.
So him and his gang were like that, and we hit it off really on a comedic level. We both loved comedy, both comedy geeks. And but I tell you, if you talk to anyone that know us from before we were ever on television,
mm-hmm.
they will tell you that is who they are. We would argue and fight. Now the scope of it changed with the TV show, obviously.
Right.
We didn't sit on cows and all the nonsense that we did on TV. But there was a classic comedy duo there. But we were clever enough to put it into a reality format and keep it as real as possible, given the fact that it isn't real, it's a TV show. But we kept it as real as we can. We produced the show in a way where I was in the dark, and I agreed to that. Okay. Because, you know, otherwise you get into, like, they miss stuff. So my camera crew was apprised of what Kenny was going to do, but I wasn't. Okay. So we didn't have to, let's retake this. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes fake, right? So when Kenny, blows air up his ass and farts on the stairway, and I'm like going, that's happening in real time. Okay. Right? Because I didn't know what he was doing downstairs. Right. Everybody else knew, but I didn't know. And it was the only way we could keep it real. So kudos to us.
And was it that way throughout the show?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the network interfered, you know, and it was a TV show, and you had to finish it, and usually schedule was 3 days of shooting. So you had to do it. A few times the network interfered. Kenny's winning too much, that kind of stuff. Nobody ever got it. Like, he could have won every episode and it would have been okay.
Right.
But then it became like when I did win, people really liked it, or they hated it, but they didn't know it could happen.
Right.
So it was important that I did win some. But no, we kept it real. We really tried.
How's your experience because you came up sort of like observing the business side of entertainment. So did that give you like a leg up taking what you guys were trying to do?
Well, unlike Kenny, because, the fundamental difference between Kenny and I is that I think hard work and achieving something through hard work is what being a man is. Being a person, I shouldn't say a man, because obviously women can do it.
Right.
And Kenny believes the guy who does the least work and gets the most from it is the winner, is the winning person. That's a real difference, right? And how that plays out in daily life. So that was always there. That was there to exploit. And I forgot the question.
I asked if your experience growing up, seeing the business, gave you a leg up in taking.
No, well, unlike Kenny, that's why I brought that up. Yeah. I worked in the industry. I worked at the bottom end of the industry.
Okay.
I was a production assistant, which is pretty much the lowest end.
Right.
The greatest job to learn the business, like most things,
Mm-hmm. Because you have a lot of time to sit around and watch.
You watch. I was a production assistant. I was in the office and I was on set.
Right.
And I was going back and forth between the two, and the head corporate office, and delivering tapes to FedEx and editing suites. So you just learn how the.
This was in LA or was it in Toronto?
Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what happened was Kenny was really talented with cameras and editing, and he had, I don't know if he stole them, but he had like those old editing machines.
Okay. Like the tape-to-tape ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he knew how to work them. And we would take his, it was a super VHS, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, camera. And we take Bobby, if anybody remembers Bobby, he was in a bunch of Kenny versus Spenny episodes. We thought he was hilarious. He's the biggest loser on the planet, but we love him to death. And we'd go make movies with them.
Okay.
And there was no money, no business, this and that. So we sort of learned how to do that. And then we turned the cameras on ourselves in a documentary called Pitch. And so Kenny managed to not have to do all the grunt work that I did to get ahead. But that's Kenny.
Right.
And I admire it for it in a certain way. So it was a bit of both, right? But show business is insane, right?
Right. So what was it once you got the show picked up? How long did it run?
7 years.
7 years. So good times mostly.
Oh, it was horrible. No, it was
for real.
Oh yeah, doing the show was a nightmare, especially for me. Yeah, it was, you didn't dread going to work or anything, but, when you have to shit your diaper on TV, it's not, you don't sleep the night before. Can I do it? What am I doing with my life? I'm shitting on TV, like, fuck, how are they letting us do this? But it was work, right?
Yeah.
We had to write not.
Was there anything you said no to?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kenny wanted to do who could make more women slap them. I just didn't want to do that.
Right.
But I knew that we had to push the envelope of that. I mean, I think the other thing is difference between us and Jackass was Jackass sort of reveled in their tomfoolery.
Right.
Where we actually hated it.
Okay.
Especially me.
Yeah.
For most of the episodes. I mean, when we're, strapped together in the 69 position, it was like one of the worst experiences of my life. He smells like a dead moose. And it was horrible, but that suffering and pain turned into comedy too, right?
Right.
So, I'm not sure, we navigated our way through the business, but we also got lucky,
How much
right
of
place,
it,
right time.
How much of it do you attribute to luck?
Well, the luckiest thing was that the network was completely not on our ass.
Okay.
To me, it was neglect.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And that allowed us to staff the show with all our friends. That allowed us to essentially do what we want. And then of course Kenny, because just the nature of who he is, he would want to do like Hitler stuff, and the network would say, no, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't make fun of Auschwitz. It's not funny. But that was what it was, and we had enough of a following after CBC, because CBC canceled us. And normally that's the end of a series. Once you're canceled, you're done.
Right.
But Showcase, for whatever reason, was another lucky break. They picked us up because we had the following from CBC.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a second chance. So a lot of things sort of aligned with us, but it was a long, long, arduous journey to get to that point.
Yeah.
We lived in LA for 13 years. We slept on couches. We did all that stuff.
Right.
And we got a show picked up in the US. It lasted a year. We had Matt and Trey from South Park producing us. We had to, a lot of shit happened, and it took a long time.
What was it like dealing with those guys? Did you deal with them directly?
Yes, Kenny more than me. They're assholes, to be honest with you, but they're brilliant, and they put their name on our show,
mm-hmm.
and they let us do what we wanted to do because that's how they produce their show.
Okay.
Right? It's that autonomy that you really want and creative control. So they did that for us. And so I love them. And when I say they're assholes, they're kind of assholes. If you even look at what they do and what they write, they're assholes, right? They make fun of people, but they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant, and they're so fucking rich. And I'm here.
Right. So after going through that whole thing, talk to me about sort of like the show ending and the transition into a live show for you.
Well, we weren't really canceled.
Okay.
It just sort of ran its course, and a lot of people don't understand. Networks changed, the ownership changed of the big conglomerate. Was CanWest Global, and then it went to Shaw. Shaw had a different agenda. So Showcase all of a sudden wasn't producing comedies. They were doing hot chick cop shows, which we weren't. So, and so that's the way things happen. We had a really long run, which I'm grateful for, much longer than most people get.
Okay.
That's a lot of shows. We did 96 shows.
Whew. So you missed the 100? How do you stop at 90?
Well, we couldn't syndicate, which was, of course, Kenny was like, oh, syndication.
You couldn't syndicate one?
No, because the content was too edgy.
Gotcha. Where's music fall into all of this, man?
Well, music is a real big passion of mine. As I said, the Beatles got me into the whole creative game, right?
Did you get a guitar in your hand right away when you were young?
No, I didn't start till I was 16, which is kind of late, Neither of my parents were musical. I willed myself to do it. At some point I said, you're either going to be in the audience or you're going to be the guy playing. And I decided I wanted to be that guy, and I had no talent, natural ability, so I'd have to work that much harder. And to this day, I still work at it, far from what I want to be.
Where'd you first find the blues as a young suburban Jewish kid in Toronto?
The blues was the Jeff Cooper, that actor guy that my mom ran away with. He gave me an album called Hard Again, Muddy Waters, and it was Johnny Winter on guitar and Willie Big Eye Smith on drums. And I don't know, either you get the blues, it either sinks into your soul or it doesn't, and it just did. And I just love it, and to this day, but it's commercial suicide, right? Basically, there was Stevie Ray brought it back a little bit,
right?
But no one really wants to hear blues music, but I'll still fucking play it, and I'll play here and not at Carnegie Hall. So that's okay. That's okay with me. But I broadened it out because people come to see me, know me from Kenny versus Spenny, so I put in some funny things. I've written some funny songs, but my heart and soul is with playing, roots music, blues and country.
Right.
And I do classic rock too now. Just it's funny because to me that's like as modern as I get. I think this is Tony Lee's here, my manager. And he's always advising me. Do this, do that, and he's right. Because you want to be able to continue to make money and do it, and you have to give people what they want. You can't just totally be selfish,
right?
Because no one will show up. Right?
Were you playing music live through the TV run as well?
No, I stopped because there was no time. But before that, I had a house gig on Queen Street, a place called the Robin's Nest. I played with a bunch of old drunks that were great musicians. They were a lot older than me, And, we played, Friday and Saturday night. And Jeff Healy would be downstairs, I'd be upstairs, and we'd play Grossman's, open mics, wherever we could get on, that kind of thing. There was a pretty good blues scene in Toronto.
Still halfway, well, I don't know if there's a decent blues scene, but there's a good music scene in Toronto.
Well, there used to be a club called Albert's Hall. It was a big beer hall where all the U of T students go to get drunk, and there's always vomit on the front of it. But there was a club upstairs called Albert's Hall, and at least when I was of the age and time in my life where I could go to these shows, they were hiring U.S. blues acts. And I saw everybody that was touring, Coco Taylor, Eddie Clearhead Vincent, Matt Guitar Murphy, Buddy Guy, Junior Wells, John Hammond.
You still go to a lot of shows?
No.
No? Why not?
Because there's not that many that interest me, and I'm married and I have kids, and you have to prioritize, right? So I like doing a lot of things, but when you have kids and all that stuff, so music is a huge priority, and comedy. Those are the two. You're
kind of, to go back onto it, you have all of this historical knowledge when it comes to entertainment. Where does that come from?
Reading and watching TV, and I'm just curious, right? I'm, I guess, intellectually curious, especially about stuff that I love. So like, the next book I'm reading is Waylon Jennings' kid, wrote a book about his dad, Waylon, and I'm going to read that. And, you get a lot of great information from books, and documentary film and this and that. And I want to know how it works, where did it come from?
Do you apply any of that stuff in your writing?
Of course. Yeah.
Where would, like, again, we had talked about it before, I don't have a vast knowledge of the show, but where would people see that without realizing they were seeing that?
Well, it's so buried. That's the good guy, bad guy thing. It's a comedy duo thing. It's the straight man and the crazy man.
Okay.
So that's totally what that show was. But
intentionally?
No, it's who we are.
Okay.
That was the reality of it. So we did a very classic comedy thing that was famous from vaudeville to comedy duos through the ages. And, even modern films, they still do the comedy duo. People love it.
Right.
And, that's basically what it is, And then the fact that it's a reality show and that we compete, that's just,
just the
gimmick. Well, that's what we came up with that. God knows why, and it worked. Thank God.
Yeah, because that was not pre-reality TV, but like really early reality TV.
Yeah,
right?
The first reality sitcom was Ozzy Osbourne.
Right.
That was the first. It was it was very rudimentary, and it didn't have, like, we had the competition. But what happens with TV is that everybody wants, especially in reality, they want the payoff at the end, the networks, right? And that's what our show had, because you had a winner and then you had that humiliation. So you had two things that people would kind of want to see at the end. You know what I mean? And we didn't. That wasn't by design. That was just what it turned out to be, a good thing.
Right.
But that was just what it is. It was a competition. But I think Tom Green is really responsible for a lot of stuff that we see and we take for granted, and he's a friend of ours.
True enough.
And Kenny's really tight with him, and what he did in his local TV show out of Ottawa is some of the funniest stuff ever. Filling his parents' house with farm animals, shit and piss everywhere, and filming them coming home. Like, it was just
painting his mom's car, because that was all pre-Jackass stuff too, right?
The Slutmobile, yeah. Well, the rumor is, and I don't know if this is true, but that when he left MTV, because Jackass was on MTV, that they found a hard drive, and Derek Harvey, who's worked with Kenny and a friend of ours, he did the show with Tom the early years, and he went to the States with them. That the Jackass guys found a hard drive. I mean, Bam. Right. If you look at some of his TV show, the early years of that show, he was doing what Tom Green was doing. He was harassing his parents, and Tom is a monster in terms of influence.
Do you still talk to Tom?
Kenny does more than me, but yeah, I see him.
Because he still do, because he started like early podcast stuff too, right? Like he was doing a whole show out of his house and shit.
Well, he's a machine. I mean, he doesn't have any attachments. He doesn't have a wife or kids, so he's constantly on tour, and he's constantly inventing. I think he announced 2 days ago he's going to be on what's that called, with the house where they move in?
Oh, the wife swap or whatever.
Brother or whatever. I don't know, not wife swap.
Big
I
Brother.
just said he wasn't married.
Right. Yeah, Big Brother. Is that
Yeah,
what you're
something
talking
like
about?
that.
Okay.
One of those shows.
I don't.
You know, he's a machine. He works his ass off, and he was doing stuff. Yeah, he had a TV show on the internet that was from his house.
Right.
You know, YouTube, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
He was doing that.
So you're talking about him doing a tour. How did you guys touring with the show become a part of
Well, that guy over there, Tony Lee, started calling us, saying, because he had worked with the Trailer Park Boys, and it was quite lucrative to take them out of TV and put them on stage and whatever. And Tony called, and it took a while for us to say yes. Of course, I said yes immediately, probably. Kenny was a bit more difficult. And he put us on the road, and he helped us build a show. And you know, the live show is very different. We don't compete in the show. It was almost like a stand-up show, but because it's us, it's not quite stand-up with people. It was us attacking each other,
right,
you know, verbally, and doing a few things that were. I used to give rectal exams on stage. Unreal, but we did that, and so it's just to be honest, I prefer live to television.
Really?
Well, of course, because financially, it's pretty good. I don't have to deal with executives.
Okay.
I get to go on the road, so I have two lives. I've got a family life, and Tony books me enough so that I'm at home just enough so my wife won't kick me out. And, you know, I'm a dad and all that stuff, but I get to tour. We tour with Tony Gray, we tour with Tony Lee, and it's fun.
Is it tough doing that stuff in the environment today, though? Because, like, that's all you hear about is, there was just an article that came out today from, I'm going to screw it up, but there was an article I saw on Facebook today, famous older actor talking about how PC culture is destroying comedy and
oh,
that
yes, it is, in a way. You know, even Seinfeld, who's the cleanest comic in the world, he's banned going on campuses, touring on campuses, because he's so offended by and he's not even a blue comic at all.
Right.
It's a problem, you know. I don't know. You have to be more specific. I have a lot to say about it, but you know.
Well, I mean, the big news. I think the big news from Canada specifically right now is there's the comedian out of Montreal who just got shouted off a stage for. And this is a whole
the
other
appropriation of culture.
Yeah, the culture of cultural appropriation with dreadlocks.
That is almost satire. That is so ridiculous to me. Like it's like if I wrote that, it would be a comedy bit, right? It would be an SNL sketch, you know. If that really happened, I assume it's a true story. Well, shame on them. Look, I love Andrew Dice Clay.
Yeah, me too.
But I get it. I get Andrew Dice Clay.
Yeah.
You know, he's playing an idiot. His name's Andrew Silverstein, and Dice is an idiot. He's a moron, right?
No, 100%.
He calls transsexuals trans testicles. Like the character is a moron, and you know, it's comedy, right?
Satire, I think, gets lost on people now a little bit too easily.
A lot of things. Well, I think everything's literacy, right? And there's a literacy to understanding Woody Allen movies. In younger kids, it's gone. They don't even get it. It's sad to me, but you know what? There once was a place called vaudeville, you know, a circuit. That's gone, extinct. Wrestling managers gone. Right. That's the way it is. So if you want to survive, you got to keep adapting.
It's interesting to me that the part that gets missed is that part of it's entertainment and part of it's life. Like you talk about Woody Allen, the first thing that I thought about wasn't his movies, it was all the stuff in his personal life. And it's like, where do you draw that line sometimes?
Well, I always say, what does, let's say he did something terrible, and I pray that he didn't. Right. Let's say he did. And I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows, right? What does that have to do with how great a film Annie Hall is? Zero, to me. You know, and I
guess the argument there is, and it's a little weird when you're talking about Annie Hall because he made his money from Annie Hall, you know, 40 years or 30 years ago. But I guess the argument is like somebody who does cross that line or whatever. Do they? I don't know. I don't even really know. I don't really understand the argument. But do they still deserve
Great
to make
question,
a career? Yeah. Do they still deserve to make a career out of?
It's like the free market. If he can have a career, he has it. And if there's some kind of retarded, and I use that word intentionally, politically correct movement that wants to stop him, well, you got to fight that. But what can you do? You're either going to, you know, roll over and die. You can apologize. There's so many ways around it, right? Or it'll kill you. And
How about the comment about PC culture killing comedy? You come from the live show that you guys do is slightly raunchy, not completely
Raunchy.
Oh,
I finger guys' asses on stage.
Yeah,
I don't think it gets raunchy.
All right, so it's slightly raunchy. Do you guys feel any of that pressure? No pun intended.
Well, Kenny, first of all, I don't think he could be a straight comic in terms of not swearing,
right?
Not bringing up the least funny things in the world, like the Holocaust, and making them funny. That's who he is. That's what he does. So, and I support it 100% because I know Kenny, and he's a good person, and you know, it's not even an act. It's just there's a separation between the art and the real person, right? And that's what I'm saying about Woody Allen. You know, we had a few times where people complained about the content. I just found out yesterday from Tony Gray that we had Mennonites in the front row of some show and they stormed out. I don't remember this, but apparently it happened.
Like recently?
No, I don't know. Okay. I don't remember because I don't know. But I don't know, you know, it's like everybody's got an opinion now. Everybody's in some tribe. Nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about. The only people that do are the experts who have the time to study these complex world issues of every kind of nature you can imagine. You know, yesterday there was the Gillette ad, you know, we talked about that earlier. I mean, I cannot believe the response to that ad, you know, with the right digging in, going, they're trying to ruin men and let men be, you know, it's beyond anything. It's like we don't know how to deal with this technology in any kind of rational way. That it's just so much of it, and it's so oversaturated, and it comes at us so fast. I just sort of use it to make money and make people laugh. That's it, because it's too insane. It's too big to get your head around. Do you engage in social media? Like I 100% do. I'm sure I have some followers here. I do talk to the fans. I mostly to be funny, and I love the haters. The more haters, the better, because I love attacking them as they attack me, because I can get comedy out of it. And it's, you know, it's not a very effective way to sell tickets, by the way, because it's so oversaturated. No, it's still the old way of just doing the work and putting up posters. It's all very local to me. When we do the bigger shows, they put quite a bit of money into social media and Facebook and thousands of dollars. That may pay off at that level. But what I'm doing here, it's grunt work, and sometimes two people show up, and sometimes there's bad weather, and sometimes it's a great show, but I'm not in it for any other reason than every day I can be above ground and be creative and make enough money to support my family is a good day.
Talk to me about the work a little bit, because I know a lot of our audience is artists of varying fields, whether they're musicians or entertainers or painters or whatever. You have an experience that's fairly rare in the entertainment industry. Talk to me about if I'm an entertainment wanted, if I'm somebody back at home that just wants to get make a living as an entertainer, what advice would you give them?
Well, you know, the first thing, I mean, I get that a lot.
Okay.
Young kids, you know, and they'll say, "Hey, Spenny, I've got this great idea for a TV show." And I'll go, "Oh, really? What network would it go on?" You know? And they look at me like they have no idea what I'm talking about. And it's like, do your homework. You know, you're trying to sell a product to a broadcasting or cable company that, you know, is it on Comedy Network? Is it on History Network? Is it on NBC? You know, like it's not just about creating the work when you get into the business of making money in this business, right? You know, do your homework, you know, like, fuck, I can't get your show. I can't get my show off the ground. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I'm fucking, you know, give me a break. And I'm not mean about it.
Right.
But, you know, read a book. I read a ton of books on Hollywood and the industry.
Right.
You know, I was generally interested in it. It wasn't even a drag. I love doing it. But you got to know your shit. But that's with everything. You got a fighter here. I mean, I guarantee you, he knows his shit about the fighting world, and he's, you know, and he's successful. You got to know your shit. But I don't care if you're a lawyer or you sell shoes. You know, know what you're doing. And there's so much information out there. There's no excuse not to, except laziness. Or wanting it for the wrong reasons. Wanting it for money.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Wanting it for money, or wanting it for fame. I never wanted to be famous, neither did Kenny. He loves it more than me, but you know, we did the work.
Right.
And that's what got us to where we are, wherever the hell we are, right? Without the work, there's nothing. But we focused on the work. We made those movies with Bobby. No one paid us to do it, you know, but that's how we learned how to do it, right?
Do you still take that same attitude now? Like you started from, you know, as kids kind of cobbling stuff together, came through, you know, the rise of the show. You have that background that you can now sort of use to make a career off of as you do different projects. But do you go back to that, like, fuck it, let's just do something?
Well, it's harder. It's harder now, especially when you get into TV. Like, look what you're doing, right? You've got a podcast. You've figured out a way to do it independently, basically. It gets a little difficult when you're doing stuff, even on a small scale of Kenny versus Spenny, because, you know, we had to have a cow, and who can sit on a cow? You know, we had to do this, we had to go there, we had to do that. It costs money, and you know, and it's so risky. You know, everybody goes, why are you guys on YouTube? Because there's no money in YouTube. No one's really monetizing or figured it out yet, right? It's another reason why I like live. And there's no editorial with live. Nobody tells us what we can or can't say.
Right.
That's amazing for a guy like me, and certainly for a guy like Kenny, right?
What do you think the future of entertainment looks like? Because you've seen a lot of changes through even just.
Oh yeah, I'm pre-computer. I'm 55. I mean, I remember when there was no computers. I remember when the calculator was like fucking science fiction. Calculator, a Casio calculator. The future, well, I think the biggest problem is going to be oversaturation, because and it already is. But I don't see that cleaning up. I mean, people have to remember that there used to be 3 channels. And if you had a TV show on that channel, you were fucking famous. That's what everybody watched. Now there's hundreds of channels. There's streaming networks. There's what you do. I mean, you know, and everybody, for whatever reason, not everybody, but many people want to do something creative, which I understand. So then there's just this massive oversaturation. So I think, I guess the only way I can answer it, it's a very complex question, is that the modes will change of how these companies monetize it. The networks are threatened by what cable can do. Cable and the networks are threatened by what the streamers can do. So it's always going to continue evolving. And probably you won't see Norman Lear's anymore, you know, where one guy makes $100 billion. Those days are over. The South Park guys did really, really well. They may be the last guys to really do that. Used to, the digital rights for TV shows, they used to give it to you. They didn't realize how valuable it was.
Right.
Now try to get the digital rights to a TV show. Good luck. The network takes it. They should. If they're nice, they'll share it with you, but they usually don't even do that because it's valuable now. So it's always changing with the technology.
Do you think it'll just become more independent?
Well, there'll be, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, YouTube's now getting into it because like Netflix, but Netflix they're in debt. I was shocked to find that out. They're not going to make money for 6 years according to their projections.
Right.
All this material they're doing, they're in debt. So it's complicated. I mean, I don't know. I think there'll always be underground stuff, always. And because of the internet and having this kind of technology, you know, you'll do it. The problem is going to be reaching audiences. That's always going to be the problem because there's so much. How do you find it?
Right.
Right. So there'll always be kingmakers out there that'll take something like a Justin Bieber who's doing YouTube videos and he'll blow up into a conventional superstar. You know, but I'm really not the guy to ask that question. It's pretty complicated, but I do know that it's changed a hell of a lot since I was a kid.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, that pretty much wraps up our conversation of this, but since there's kind of an intimate audience here, I wanted to kind of open the floor up to anybody in the room. Anybody have any questions that they want to ask Spenny? We'll give you a shot.
Hey man, I just want to see some music.
Yeah. And then we are going to get to the music for a second. Did you? Oh, anyone?
Yeah. What's with the headband?
Oh.
I'm glad you asked.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because I get pummeled for the headband. Okay. Let me tell you why the headband is the greatest thing ever, and it's called a bandana, by the way. Practical.
Yeah,
I'm a pragmatic, practical man, right? First thing is this: stays on my head. total access to my glasses. Secondly, bad haircuts, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I used to get, let's be honest, we all don't like, well, maybe not you, and you, definitely not you. He doesn't even have eyebrows, so I don't know. So, but when you have long hair, and you're like me, you don't want to have a bad haircut. No one wants to have a bad haircut. So now it doesn't matter. I get a bad haircut, I put the bandana on, nobody knows. So that's two reasons, right? Mm-hmm. Hair dye, I've been dyeing my hair since I was in my 20s, right? If I forget to dye it, the roots come out.
Right.
It's covered, right? Great, so we're up to 3. Number 4, I was sleeping on that couch last night. The sun's coming in. And number 5, it looks cool. That's it, that's the bandana shtick.
Thanks for hanging out,
AJ,
man.
thank you so much.
We're gonna have some music here, folks. We're gonna take a couple of minutes just to tear down. Thank you for sitting through our conversation, and thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.
All right. That's going to end this episode of the AVB Podcast. Make sure you check out the other episodes that we have up next to us here. And, of course, there's the links down below. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell and all that other happy horse shit. See you later, folks. Bye-bye.